Welcome to the Laughing Monkey Music Show. It's by Jan Hammer. How are you?
And how are you? I'm doing great.
Well, thank you for coming on. This is really awesome. I've been listening to your music since, well, my whole life. You've you've done a lot of things in your life. You've done some fantastic things all the way up from early on, from Mahavishnu Orchestra, which is one of the things I love. And I loved your work with Jeff Beck. And, of course, you've done a ton of stuff with Miami Vice. You've performed with a lot of people. You continually put out new music. And we're going to talk about your new music today. You have a new album out, which is a part two. Right? Seasons Part 1 came out in 2020. And Part 2 came out recently this year. One of the things that I see is you're so prolific at songwriting. Do you ever get writer's block?
Of course. That's bound to happen.
It's insane. I mean, I like the pace you kept for Miami Vice. That much material for one artist.
Yeah, that was pretty hard work. Like every week there was sort of doing like a mini movie. Yeah, that was. I don't know if I could even do it again, but I was definitely on it then. I was able to do it.
I mean, it was insane. It was like 90 episodes, and you did like, I think, am I right? About 90 episodes, you did like 20 minutes worth of music in every episode.
That's correct. That's about right. Yeah.
An army of musicians. That is insane.
Of course, but the way to do that is not to look back. You know,
right.
Do not second guess. Just go with your instinct, record it, send it off, and move on to next week. Fortunately, I was given the freedom to really do, the work that way. Nobody interfered and told me, you want to change this or change that. I was able to just roll with it.
And it's interesting that you've done in different styles. Like I didn't realize at the time, that you had done Mahavishnu Orchestra, and the other work. I didn't put two and two together at first because I'm writing pop and then you also do jazz. You do so many different styles. Looking back, I can see how they all kind of tie in. But back then, I didn't see the tie-in for that. Did you make a real focused change to try making it much more pop-oriented in the 80s?
I don't know. It was very very natural progression, and I was always attracted to some sort of a pop. Be it electro pop or electro metal and whatever you want to call it. And obviously, the ultimate pop music, like Beatles.
Yes.
So I was attracted to songwriting and fell in love with all that music too.
Who was your first actual influence?
In what style of music?
Any style, actually, just off the top of your head. I don't usually ask that question, but I'm kind of curious with you because
I would say when I was little, it would probably be Errol Garner, the jazz pianist. I was about 8 years old, and I was very much, I guess, impressed by that. But then over and over, there was different jazz pianists, who I heard, and like Oscar Peterson and Bill Evans. I don't know if people will know many people.
Well, I know some of them. I know all their songs, but I do a lot of deep dives and.
Yeah, no, this is
artists. I look at their references. I go back even further. I like to do that,
And then basically, once I was in high school, the Beatles came out, and it was all over for me. It was. I mean, I was still playing jazz because I was good at it, and I was actually doing it professionally. But Beatles, and then Jimi Hendrix came and totally spun my head around.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, but so you're already professional in your teens, so that's quite a career path to start so young. I mean, obviously you're a natural talent. Was there any certain early on, like, have you changed from the certain? I know they've gone through like different keyboards and Korg and stuff. Early on, did you find something you liked in particular, and then over the years you changed and went back to it? Or you kind of have a personal favorite keyboard?
As far as instruments?
Yeah.
Well, that's really jumping into the present.
Okay.
I mean, originally, as far as electronic and solo instrument, I would have to say that the most important step for me was discovering the mini Moog. You know, the Moog. There's a small Moog synthesizer called mini Moog that I used to play with Mahavishnu Orchestra and on my solo albums and with Jeff, and that really became my voice because it was much more. I had much more freedom with melodic ideas than on a piano. Because on a piano you cannot do vibrato or bend slides and bend notes, you know, like a kid. So that's why mini Moog really became my main voice. And since then, I would have to say probably a Korg. You know, all the different Korgs that came through the years. Those were my lead instruments.
And up until today, is there a favorite? Is it still like a favorite Korg? Is there like a favorite machine you have, a favorite keyboard
that I use?
Yeah,
well,
your favorite.
It's the, what is it called? Is it Triton?
Okay. Triton.
There were so many of them, and it's in the studio, and I don't look at the names, and I forget.
I'm a guitar player. My buddy has a cellar full of keyboards, so that's why I was just interested in the, over the years of your styles change. You go back to older instruments because you like, and nowadays newer instruments can replicate older instruments now. So it's changed a lot in the industry.
The way it works in my studio now, after all these years, what you hear is not necessarily the instrument that I'm playing. I'm using the instrument as a keyboard, and then it's connected to the computer, and there is hundreds of different virtual instruments that could be samples. Basically, it's in the box as opposed to playing the keyboard itself. I'm using the keyboard as a controller. That's really the word.
Okay, I see that.
We're getting into the weeds.
No. I get what you're saying. I'm aware that. Beck, and you've worked with a lot of, from Jagger and Santana, but you've also done a lot of your own solo stuff. Do you kind of like to flip-flop between the two through your career? Do you find like it's nice to be in a group, but it's also kind of nice to be your own creative source without having to,
That's pretty much how you hit it on the nose. It's very nice to have the variety, to be able to lock yourself up in a studio, which is probably my favorite way of working anyway. But then, I going out on stage and being on the stage at Hollywood Bowl with Jeff Beck, and that's something altogether different. It's just head spinning.
Yeah, the work you've done with Jeff Beck is just phenomenal. I love the last performance. It's like the Hollywood Bowl. I think it was like the last performance I just saw of you guys. It's not that old either. Set up on YouTube not that long ago. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
It's so good. I mean, I love Jeff Beck too as a guitar player. So
I'm sure. No, Jeff is one of a kind. It's unbelievable.
He is, and late '70s work he did with him, I always loved. So stumbling across that now and seeing a more current performance of it was fantastic for me. What are your goals now? Is it a certain amount of solo albums? You have a bunch of songs that you must have a storage of a ton of them that you haven't put out yet. Like
there is lots of ideas around, yeah, for sure. But as far as live performances, that's not really that's not in the cards. I'm not going to be doing any, meaning, my own solo live performances. If Jeff calls me and says come on, let's come on and play with me here or there, I'll definitely show up and play with him. It's about the only live performance that I would do.
Really? Wow.
And the rest of it is basically just me by myself in a studio.
I get that. Let's talk about some of your solo stuff though, because it's beautiful, it's pretty, but it can also be upbeat. Are you working on a different mindset per album, or do you just kind of are you following a theme? We can start with even talk about the seasons. The 2 seasons albums I've been listening to a lot, preparing to talk to you.
The seasons, again, the music comes first, and then the title comes second.
Okay.
It wasn't like I decided I'm going to now compose, an concept album and call it Seasons. It basically good pieces of music come together, and then you realize that that is pretty much what it reminds you of. Plus, what's really been on my mind is the catastrophic climate change, and how the seasons don't mean what they used to mean, and how big a trouble we are in, and what we have to do to try and stop it. It's probably the overriding theme that constantly stays in my head, and so I'm people are scared. I'm scared because we let it go for too long. Yeah, I'm basically looking for the hope.
Yes, we all need the hope.
Yeah, and I want to lift people up and give them a peek into what's possible. Like the good example on the new album, the last cut is called Sweet Horizon, and that is probably my favorite cut on the whole record, and that's what I'm talking about. To see that there is a way out.
Because your songwriting, you're so prolific, more than most artists I've ever known. That's why I wonder your writing style and how your concepts go as opposed to other people. Because some people be like, I have an idea, I'll write a song or this. But when I look at your work ethic and the amount of stuff you've done, it feels inhuman, like it's not like a robot. So that's why I just ask. I think your brain is going to always be working on music.
No, I do take time off. Don't worry about it. It just when it comes naturally, that's how I like it. You have to be basically ready for when the inspiration strikes, and be able to put it together into a coherent piece of music. And I don't really feel myself forced, to do certain amount of work or writing every day or all that. I'm not like that.
No, you just do it because you enjoy it. It doesn't feel like a day at work type of thing where you just love what you do.
Yeah, basically, if the mood or inspiration hits me, I'll do something, and if it doesn't, I don't cry over spilled milk.
That's awesome. One of the things I saw you've done in your life is, I know you did original music for TV Nova, and that must have been like such a personal highlight in your life.
Oh, right. That's interesting that you know about that.
Yeah.
That was the first post-communist Czechoslovakian network.
Yep.
And they hired me to do all their whole suite of music for all the different programs, all the themes, and it was fantastic. Visiting Prague a couple of years after, I've done lots of the TV jingles and themes things, and I could walk, in the evening I would walk on the street, and I could hear my music coming out of the window. It was so beautiful because I was born there in Prague, and it just felt so good that Prague was soaking in my music.
When I read that and learned about that, I was like, that's probably one of the most beautiful things you've done because of being born there and then having such a part of your culture. Now, like you're totally sewn into it now. And once again, you said you wrote a bunch of songs. I mean, you did a lot of themes. I mean, you did most of the music for the entire network for a while. I mean, you were doing everything. Once again, like Miami Vice style amount of work.
Right. It was a little bit different because Miami Vice was more of underscore, and this was more like self-contained 10-second, 20-second, sometimes 30-second pieces. Sort of compact, like TV news,
okay,
evening news theme, and sports and weather and all that. But those things are usually shorter than the underscore for Miami Vice.
Are you always giving them the visual first, like the raw footage?
I mean, the way of working on Miami Vice was that I would get a rough cut of the footage of the next week's episode.
Okay.
And I did not know the story. So I saw it for the first time, and I got caught up in the drama and the suspense. and my response to it was writing music. So
Okay.
it was poking my brain and saying, how about this, how about that. So that's how it worked. The pictures came first, and I responded to the tension on the screen.
Different parts of your career you've gone on. Is there a favorite part of your career that you've done? I mean, between the TVs and movies, and then, in the 70s, the orchestra, and just you've done so many different things, and you're still doing, now a lot more solo albums. Do you feel like there's a certain spot where you're just like, this is the best?
Oh, you mean from all of the things?
Yeah, for all of them. Or you kind of feel like each kind of period of your life are kind of like kids. You can't really kind of pick a one, or you're like, you know what, this one's kind of the best.
Well, as far as best music, I really cannot pick one. But as far as the best moment, like a most rewarding,
yeah,
was having the number one hit on the Billboard Top 100 with the Miami Vice theme.
Yep.
That, and also getting Grammy, 2 Grammys for it.
That was pretty awesome.
Was pretty cool. That was one of those big moments.
The pace of what you're doing, are we still kind of working towards putting out more music, or, like with seasons, or you're just going to kind of take it as it goes at this point and relax?
Well, the reason when I did the Seasons Part 1, I called the record Seasons, and then I said, how about Part 1? To give me a kick in the ass to like remember that I have to do some more. And it worked.
Because of your love of the studio and being locked in it so much, I can't even say, like, so did COVID change your work ethic and feel like you got more work done? Because that's kind of like you were preparing your whole life in the studio for COVID.
Yeah.
Right?
It really didn't change my approach to work at all that much, because I was like that before too.
Yeah,
so.
I think it's much. Whereas the rest of the world was on tour and they had no time for stuff, and you're like, nope, I've been doing this. This is how
this is what is the change? There's no change.
Everything you want to put out, you think everything's been represented the way you want it. And I can use like an example, like, unfortunately Frank Zappa passed early, but there's a lot of work of his that will still continue to go on and will be put out. Do you think you've kind of got a lot of your work out so when people look back, they know kind of who you are?
I hope so. I do think so. I would agree with that. Yeah.
I mean, you've done a complete career. I mean, you've got you could probably have another 20, 30 years. Like, people are living long and making music late. The Stones have already changed the rules for everybody as far as musicians performing at a higher caliber on stage, right?
Yeah.
So the bar's been raised. Challenge accepted.
And what's funny is, like, people don't even realize that in my early jazz career, I played piano I accompanied the great jazz singer Sarah Vaughan.
Yeah, and Stanley Clarke too, right? You did some work with Stanley Clarke?
I'm sorry?
Did you do work with Stanley Clarke too, I thought?
Oh, yeah, no, I played on his first solo album, yeah. That was a beautiful album. It was with Tony Williams on drums and Billy Connors on guitar.
Man, that's insane.
That was insane. That was really a great record.
I mean, you've lived the musical career of like 3 or 4 different musicians, Yeah. I mean, you just packed up after doing the Mahavishnu Orchestra. That was huge. It still weighs huge in a lot of people's lives, you know what I mean? On my show, a lot of people quote that as one of their favorite bands growing up that influenced them. Hands down, just last week, somebody was talking about that band.
Yeah, that was pretty cosmic.
You can consider it was in the 70s, right? And people are still talking about how influential it was. And then, like I said, Sarah Vaughan, and then it's different age groups. The Miami Vice changed my life for keyboards, and got a lot of people into keyboards that wouldn't be into keyboards,
Yeah, no, but what's funny, I went directly from working with Sarah Vaughan to Mahavishnu Orchestra. That was from 1 week to the next.
Wow.
Yep.
That must have been crazy, like a total change. Like your mindset must have been totally different from one to the other.
Well, I was already, very much into the electro improvisational thing that was going on around New York City. We had all these jams where we would get together in people. We had a loft, and people would come over, and so that kind of music was bubbling under, while I was still, my day job was touring with Sarah Vaughan.
You actually also worked with Neil Schoen, and did some recording with him also.
Oh yeah, that was fantastic. Loved that.
And Neil's done a lot of different interesting projects too over the years. We were like, you don't realize that when you first hear his name, you learn your younger, journey. But then as you get older, he's done a lot of fantastic projects, a lot of really interesting, good stuff. Because he's a really interesting guitar player.
Oh, it's hard to say. I tend to think that he's actually underrated in a sense, because people know him as this like soaring, lead guitarist with Journey. But he is an amazing rhythm guitar player. As far as I just couldn't believe how good it felt to have him play rhythm for me. On when we did the record.
That is crazy. I mean, and I agree with you. But I also think like Journey had a couple different versions. You know what I mean? People don't remember the first version of Journey and the technical side of it as much as they remember the big ballads, and the fast riffs of
right,
awesome, faithfully or whatever. Those are some awesome riffs. They're iconic. But with you, yeah, he's done a lot of other fantastic stuff that people aren't aware of. Mick Jagger. Which album did you write on his first one?
Yeah, I played on his first solo album. Yes.
Oh, She's a Boss is like.
Right, that's the one. Yeah.
Oh, that's you. Okay, I don't remember that because I didn't have cassette anymore. And nowadays, if you go on iTunes, you're not going to see all the players on it. So I never even realized that. See, you're everywhere.
Yeah.
And that's the album with Jeff Beck too. And that is like one of my favorite. That actually is my favorite Mick Jagger album of like solo stuff.
Yeah, no, he's special.
But that album was above and beyond.
Yeah, it was great.
The riffs and everything else, that was good. That you guys and the way that your sound just added to was fantastic. I want to thank you for taking some time today and let me pick your brain a little bit. I want to dig too deep into I know you've gone on and on about different things your whole life, and I've seen a lot of interviews. But I'd like to touch on that. I'm glad we could thank you for sharing a little bit about the TV Nova stuff. I always thought it had been so important. So I was so impressed by that of some of the projects you've done. Besides, of course, a lot of my favorite work you've done.
Well, thank you.
Do you have any future work coming up that you have planned, or at this point you're just going to keep working at your own pace? And
pretty much like that. There's nothing coming up like in any immediate near future, because I have these two albums and I'm going to let them roll.
Yeah.
And keep being heard, and then I'll see what comes next. But I don't have any immediate plans.
Is there going to be any media like tie-ins to help promote the albums a little bit, since you're not going to do any playing out?
Well, that's what I'm doing. I'm talking to everybody.
I meant like videos, like music videos, or like
not really.
A thing like a small little video home. Because people do those kind of like virtual concerts and stuff.
Again, I'm like much prefer to just do the sound and the music do the talking.
I hear you. I respect that. That's awesome. Well, I want to thank you for being on the show. This is great. I want everybody to check out the new albums. And obviously, people have heard the other stuff. If they didn't know it was you, they know now. Even I just learned something tonight. Thank you very much for being on the show. It's been great.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.